Hello, it's November 11th, 2017. I'm Tony Samario, coming to you from my father, BroSal.org YouTube channel. And this is going to be a little different version of World News Update because I'm going to try and share a little of my personal experience in this world today. I'm in Seattle, Washington, United States of America, on this 11th of November. It's in about 40 degrees and I'm cold. I live in Mexico now, and boy, I'll tell you, I've seen a lot since I've been here. And the reason I'm doing this show is because I've really been having a problem getting the internet I need here. I can't get the Blue Letter Bible in right now where I'm at because the internet isn't strong enough. I was having a problem signing back into our BroSal.org YouTube channel. It's been a real test since I left Mexico last week. And yet I feel that, the people like Brother Dave who are faithful to this ministry and are perhaps waiting, for at least something for their continuous participation. I want to be able to give something back. And so I just want everybody to know that I'm doing the best I can here, and I'm in a bit of a pickle, but I've been noticing some things that I think I'd like to talk about. And so I'm going to label this a world news update, but it's a little more of a personal appeal and correspondence to the people that actually care. I came up here to deliver a sailboat, and we're trying to make that happen right now. So I'm waiting in Seattle to find out when this is going to happen. It's mostly happening at my own expense, and I'm in a place where I'm cold, I'm tired, the internet access is limited, and I was tonight feeling very frustrated. Called my father. I was in a terrible mood. I feel like I acted like I just was really losing my patience. I haven't been in America for a while, and everything I see comes through my little bit of these news channels. I see what's being reported, but I don't live in this world anymore. And now that I've been here for a week or so, I really I feel so thankful that the Spirit took me out of this world to a place where, well, let's just say it's more conducive to my own spirit. Mexico is a place where it doesn't take as much money to live. People live a little more what I would call human. I feel like I've come almost to another planet, being now in the United States where everything's sold by the inch. I'm in a marina that costs the person who I'm helping a lot of money to be here, and yet the internet coverage is so bad for me. I have to stand out in the 40-degree weather above deck of the boat that I'm staying on just to get reasonable internet reception, which is not very consistent. I tried to get the Blue Letter Bible tonight, and I just couldn't get it. I can't flip between pages. I can't really teach from it like I'd like to. Being limited on the bags I could bring, I wasn't able to bring my Bible, imagining that I could just use the Blue Letter Bible. Since I'm in America, I could get the internet everywhere. And my little bit of hardship has made me aware of what little hardship I really have compared to the people around me. It's getting cold here now. There's homeless people everywhere in this city. Seattle, I just saw a newspaper headline not long ago that here in Seattle that said Seattle's still #1 in the real estate market, meaning the housing prices here holding stronger than anywhere in the country, I suppose. Um, it's home to Google and Microsoft and all these Starbucks, all these giant corporations that are, made multi millionaires out of their stockholders. And yet the problem for the homeless people gets worse. The problems for anyone uh, on a budget, like most of us, gets worse. The gas goes up, the rents go up, the food goes up. I even have had a chance to talk to a couple of homeless people, and it just breaks my heart. I mean, they're living in tents on the street in freezing cold weather, begging for a few dollars to eat. And of course, in America, people have, even those people, for the most part, have it better than many in the world who are struggling right now. In Yemen, they're dying of cholera. In Syria, they're being driven from their homes. In Africa, they're being slaughtered as they have been for decades. In Bangladesh, there's genocide and ethnic cleansing going on. And it's brought back home for me the the real moment in which we live, not just the projected eschatological idea of a disconnected end times that has to do with the Bible or an idea of salvation, but what the end times really means. And I feel like what I've encountered is demonstrating to me how the end times has been going on for quite some time, in the way that what used to be very human in the sense of relationships to each other and to what the basic needs of a human are. This has been deteriorating for a long time. I mean, if you go back to England and what they have done to the poor, you go back to France during the Revolution. You read a book like Les Miserables, which Victor Hugo said was a religious work, and it certainly is. It's his account of what it really means to believe, and he embodies that in the character of the Reverend there, that takes the poor beggar in that no one will take because he's marked as a criminal that spent 10 years hard time because he stole a loaf of bread to feed his niece and nephew, his sister's kids that were starving. And because he stole that loaf of bread, they locked him up in hard labor for 10 years, Jean Valjean. And when he gets out, he's marked as a criminal. And everywhere he goes in that freezing night, no one will take him in, except for the one Spirit of God, through that character that Victor Hugo created for his own expression of what God's Spirit must be, the one that sees beyond any sort of human definition into the spiritual definition that the Messiah brought, to love. To love, that's the Spirit of God. Love, giving, washing the feet of our servant. And so, of course, in the story, Father Bienvenu, Father Welcome, brings Jean Valjean in from the cold and feeds him. treats him with dignity, and is repaid by the fact that this desperate criminal, seeing no other choice, decides to steal the silver from the abbey that the good father Bienvenu was the priest over. He steals from this priest that treated him so well, and he gets caught. And the gendarmes, the police, bring him back to that abbey to return the silver and inform the father that they will be taking this criminal back to jail forever. And the priest does something unexpected. He says, "No, wait a minute. He didn't steal that stuff. I gave it to him. I gave him that stuff. In fact," he says, "Jean Valjean, my brother, you left in such a hurry, you forgot the most prized things that I give you. The two candlesticks, the silver candlesticks that are worth the most. Don't you know? You forgot those." So he gives them those as well, and he tells the police, "Let him go. He didn't steal anything. I gave this stuff to him." And of course, this is the thing that changes the criminal's life. And he becomes a rich man. And well, the story is quite a beautiful story and really does express so much of what is the confused nature of our concept of reality with each other in relationships, with relation to God and religion, with relation to the law, as expressed by the police officer that can see nothing but the black and white of the law. And this, being here in America and seeing all the injustice and the oppression and the homelessness and the unspeakable offensiveness, in my view, of the richest of companies operating and being allowed to operate without any concern for the destitute all around them. Not only no concern, but that all the laws are made in favor of the corporate or otherwise wealthy and made against the destitute. So that quite recently, and well, as an ongoing measure, the homeless and the destitute get less and less. They take more and more areas away from them wherever they've found that might give them some shelter or some measure of safety or security. Those places are taken from them, and they're constantly kicked out further into the cold, further away from security or safety, while the laws are made to keep giving Google more tax breaks, more opportunity to buy property, more opportunity to expand their operation. The rich get richer, and for some reason we just don't care that the not just that the poor get poorer, but that the destitute get destroyed. And even in the most mild way, as I've dealt with it through the person I'm trying to help in delivering this sailboat, this is a person who grew up in this area, whose father was someone who built boats, who taught his children to sail. These people have sailed this area all their life. And if you don't know the Seattle and Northwest area, it's the Puget Sound is an immense inland body of seawater that extends is just hundreds of miles of shoreline with endless natural harbors, endless places for a person on a boat to take refuge. And yet, as of 2011, there is no refuge left. You cannot anchor your boat. Yes, you can for 30 days, and then you must move 5 nautical miles. And even in that, you can only anchor for 90 days in any one year. So that you're just essentially not allowed to live on the water. You're not allowed to exist. You're not even allowed to keep your boat. Even if you live on the land and pay an exorbitant amount of rent, your boat's not allowed to live on the water in this place that was settled. Well, of course, the natives lived here on the water and lived off the water. And then people like George Vancouver, the island of Vancouver is named of, the Europeans that came here and explored it. Well, of course, there's no other way to live but off the water, to take advantage of all these natural harbors as a safe haven. And yet, here we are 100 years, 150 years later. All the natives have been driven out, and now even the conquerors that took over, their children are not allowed even to park their boat on all these waterways without great expense and difficulty. There's just no free ride, is the idea. I mean, if you're Halliburton, there's, of course, offshore bank accounts, you don't pay any taxes, your shareholders get all the tax breaks, anything they want to develop, no matter who it pushes out, that's okay. If the homeless got to go, well, that's okay. The police will go in and run the homeless away so you can build a Starbucks. You wouldn't think for a moment of taxing Starbucks that, well, maybe you better build at least you know, some sort of refuge for the homeless people whose property you need, whose area you need to take to build your Starbucks so that, they don't have to freeze to death and starve to death. But apparently that's not important in the great and free America. Freezing and starving to death of homeless is just part of the American way, like slaughtering all the natives. And so, I just want to make sure people who listen to me understand that there's nothing great or free about America. It's certainly the only real terrorist that's ever existed in the world militarily, in the modern world, since the invention of modern military. And the plan that I talk about that seems to be obvious, of 3 world wars and the culling of humanity, the great work that's meant to extinguish this idea that there's a God, or that anyone that believes in God would have any authority whatsoever, and that the people who believe that they are God would be the ones. Well, they've ruled the world for a long time, but they don't want not only competition, they don't want any hassles. Why should they have to deal with the poor and destitute? In their world, it's like a natural selection, like in nature. If you're not strong enough, well, you should die. You should be culled. For anyone who believes in God or the scripture, it should be obvious what an offense that is. But I find it strange how much this just goes on. No one seems to really care. I mean, we talk, but it goes on. And I'm getting a chance to live it again firsthand, as I've done before. I've lived in San Francisco. I once went to work and watched the ambulance pull a frozen homeless man, a dead person, out of the alley that froze during the night. And they just routine, I suppose. They're dying every day. And that's okay, because the property value keeps going up for the people who build condos where where they might build a homeless shelter. instead. And so it's affecting me enough to want to at least take a moment, since I can't really get to the Bible study I want to do. And I was reflecting on the idea of, then Elohim said, let there be light. And if you're going to associate light with God's existence, well, then that light is also love, that love of our neighbor that was displayed in the Messiah. And how dark is this world now? In reflecting on what does it mean to be in the end times? What is the end times? Obviously, the world's always been dark. None of this has ever stopped. It was going on in the time of Jesus. He was a dirty beggar that they didn't want. The Pharisees didn't want around. Nobody wanted around. Who are you? What good ever came out of Nazareth, right? They already had a homeless area, a destitute area that you didn't expect anything to come out of. And yet that's where God's Spirit did come out of. And I want to remind all those Christians out there, where do you think when Jesus returns? You really think he's coming to the sky to rapture all you hypocrites, all us hypocrites? For I will be happy to include myself in this. Or do you really think he's going to show up to those homeless people and comfort them? That's where I expect to find Jesus when he returns. I expect to find him comforting the homeless, which is why none of the Christians are going to realize who he is, just like the Pharisees of the day didn't realize who the Messiah. They were waiting for somebody else. Well, I think the Christians are waiting for somebody else too. They're waiting for their white Jesus to come and rapture them to their mansion in the sky, pat them on the back for believing in Jesus while they passed all the homeless. And, it's just hitting home for me. How can that possibly be? How what did we read in John several months back? How can you see someone in need and not help them? The Spirit of God can't be in you. The truth can't be in you. How can you hate your brother, homeless or not, dirty or not? How can the Spirit of God be in you? How can you say you believe in Jesus? You're a liar. The Spirit of God isn't in you. And I'm really feeling that these days. That the darkness, the cries that reach up to heaven, who do you think they're the cries of? All these Christians claiming to be persecuted because, they're letting gays get married. Oh, God. No, I doubt it. All these Christians complaining because they're tearing their crosses down. Well, the cross isn't a Christian symbol anyway. It's a pagan symbol if you knew anything about Christianity. You really think that's why the end times? You think that's the cries that are going up to heaven? When this world that I'm in right now, gets richer and richer and richer, and all they can do is make the destitute more destitute and more destitute and more destitute. I mean, what a crime. What a spiritual crime. And so I just wanted to relate that as a sign of where we're really at for people. I mean, I don't know what else is important to think about. I'll say a couple of things about the world news right now, the absurdity, though I haven't watched End Times Ministries since I've been here because my internet connection's not so good. But I can imagine what's going on there, the same old stupid propaganda. I just noticed this massacre in a Texas church. I don't know if that's true, because it's possible that they've got people they can flip out mentally that will go in and do such things. It's possible. All I know is if such things happened in our world, they'd be happy to show you the blood and guts. They'd be happy to make it graphic so that you could be as frightened as possible. So I haven't seen the evidence yet. I can tell you the supposed Mandalay Bay massacre was nothing but a hoax, nothing but propaganda. So when you consider that 5 years ago they made propaganda legal, and ever since then you've had nothing but ads for crisis actors, drills that somehow are always identical to the supposed terrorism, I have to suspect, without knowing the details, that this is one more piece of government propaganda. Because, I mean, if their idea is that we needed to make, if their argument, I should say, because it's not an idea, it's a purposeful plan. So if the plan calls for confusing and deceiving Americans, especially Christians, into becoming this apostasia or capitalizing on the apostasia or reinforcing the hypocritical nature that they know is in us to make us pretend we're such great believers while making us abandon the very faith we say we believe in, well, then it's this propaganda machine that they've created that is the natural tool that facilitates that ability of theirs. And if the plan is to destroy Christianity, true Christianity, if the plan is to make Christianity so untenable and unbelievable and unreasonable that when they introduce their Messiah, the not deliverer, the false deliverer, the antichrist, which isn't a devil coming from the sky, it's man's answer to the deliverer that everyone's waiting for. Because they're playing the part of God, bringing about the prophecy of Scripture, in my view. They're going to prove that they're God by being God. So they have a deliverer to offer up, a false deliverer. And that false deliverer is the one that's got to fool most of Christianity, the apostasia, because Jesus said it would fool the very elect if that were possible. Well, who's the very elect? Right? That's not just your average Joe, is it? I mean, why wouldn't he say it? It'll fool the average Joe. It'll fool the shallow believer. It'll fool the very elect if that were possible. Meaning the deception would be so thorough and so convincing that only by being one of the very elect would you see through it. So in trying to reconcile that, it seems to me that this deception has to be so great and so convincing that most of what we call Christianity, this Laodicean church that we're in, we lukewarm believers who love to say, I believe in Jesus, but we can't seem to put the destitute before ourselves like Jesus did. We can't seem to get down on our knees and scrub the feet of our servant, let alone turn our other cheek or love our enemy. Hell, we're talking about how we have to defend ourselves and go. I mean, Donald Trump, the great Christian, talks about destroying, wiping North Korea off the face of the earth. Yeah, that's pretty Christian. Because, of course, they're all just bad people because they're born in North Korea, right? Nobody there believes in Jesus, right? They don't have any churches. Nobody believes in Jesus. Nobody's righteous there. They don't love their brother, do they? Anyone in North Korea care more, do they look after their neighbor? Nah, they all just want to destroy America, right? So this absurd world we live in which we can just watch genocide, ethnic cleansing, the slaughtering of innocents, like the children in Yemen right now, the people in Yemen, and somehow feel just, I don't know, go to work every day. What can we do? We're the great and free America. I mean, how it is that we're all just not so distraught that we can't even function. We can't even, how could you go to work? I mean, when my brother died, you know, I I was pretty much useless for quite some time. All I did was cry. All I did was, you know, nothing meant anything to me. I cried for a year for my brother every day and every night. I cried myself to sleep and I cried myself awake, and I'm a believer. I'm a guy who believes I have a hope. I have a hope I'm going to see my brother again, and yet it was just such a difficult moment to face in reality. That my brother, who I loved so much and thought would always be a part of my life, was suddenly taken out of this life. And it was a real test of faith for me. I mean, it demonstrated to me how weak my faith really was. What a bunch of hot air my faith really was at that time. I like to think it's gotten a little stronger, but I still would have to consider myself a Laodicean who's lukewarm because I just can't give it all up. And I know he stands at the door and knocks, and I'm trying to let him in so he'll sup with me because I don't want to miss what he promises. And I have that hope. But I've also studied the scripture enough to know that believing in Jesus isn't following Jesus. That's not what the master asked. And so when I look at this world, I'm a bit overwhelmed right now. I want to cry. I want to sit down and not move until something changes, because how can I keep taking another step forward and leaving all my brothers and sisters behind, freezing in the cold, starving? And the ones that aren't freezing and starving are increasingly being pushed out of whatever security or comfort they might have and pushed deeper and closer to destitution. And so it's made me reflect on this other side of what we've been watching in the Albert Pike idea of 3 world wars and this exhaustion that's coming. And I'd have to say that I really do feel that I feel exhausted. I feel exhausted walking through this world that I'm in right now. It's been easier to be in Mexico where nobody's really starving. I don't live. I mean, I'm sure in Mexico City this is going on, but in the coastal area where I live, even the poorest of people have something to eat and they're not freezing to death. And boy, you just don't see the sort of destitution you see here. And it makes me reflect on something I've been noticing since I first got to Mexico. Who's the rich country? I mean, Mexico's the poor country and America's the rich country because America's got Google and Halliburton and people whose money's in Swiss bank accounts that pay no taxes and are happy to drive the homeless further from any sort of possibility of survival so they can build the next Starbucks. That's what we consider a rich country. How could we even say that? It's it's offensive to me. And so I just want to reflect for a minute on where we're at in the world, because on the other side of the coin, I absolutely can feel that the end is not yet. Jesus didn't say that for nothing. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. You're bound to hear of that. Nation will rise against nation. The end is not yet. That's not the end you're asking me about. The end of the age. That's not yet. No, no, that's not yet. And I'm afraid we have many years of this exhaustion and destitution to go through. This propaganda that's meant to drive us in crazy, meant to make us exhausted, meant to give a reason that they can tell us. For instance, my father just told me they got to raise the gas in California. 12 cents, and then at the first of the year, another 12 cents, which is almost a 10% raise. Who's that going to hurt? Halliburton or the people that are just barely getting by already? How could that possibly be necessary at a time when everybody's struggling? Wouldn't you think it's the time to start reintroducing that tax on the wealthy like it was a generation ago, when if you happen to be a corporation or you happen to be someone who became super wealthy, you reached a 90% tax bracket. Oh, the rich, oh, how can you take 90%? Well, only because you have such an unfair advantage. You carry such an unfair amount of the money that's needed for everybody else to eat. And then what you do with it, by putting it in your offshore accounts, by driving the homeless and the destitute further into destitution so that you can make even more. That seems, who can justify that in any spiritual? I don't care if you're a Buddhist, I don't care if you're a Hindu, I don't care if you're a New Ager. Who can justify this offensive reality? Oh, the great Christian country of America can not only justify it, we're absolutely happy to brag about it. We're the great and free America. Jesus is coming to save us. Wow. I'm flabbergasted at this point, you guys. I'm flabbergasted. The end is not yet. We're just at the beginning of the birth pain, as Jesus said, which unfortunately, as I reflect on it, seems, when I look at how many years my father and I have been following eschatology, I have to imagine that we are a decade or more. I'm starting to think we could be 20, 30 years from rebuilding that temple. I hope not, but we know the sign is they're going to make peace. All of this propaganda is to exhaust the world and lead them to a peace that is only meant to stimulate the Great War. It's not peace because anyone wants peace. It's not peace because they mean for there to be peace. It's peace because peace is the last step before the war that culls humanity in the great work. And I say, Jesus was probably right. We're not there yet. The end's not yet. They're not ready for that yet. They're just starting that. We're getting started on that last step. And to get there, this propaganda, this exhaustion, this pretending the world's full of terrorism coming from somewhere else, that there's people going into churches and just shooting people up. Because if that's happening, which I have yet to see any of the evidence, I can tell you Mandalay Bay is fake, the Boston bombing, fake, the the children there in Sandy Hook, fake. So I don't know why I would believe that suddenly somebody went into a church and shot everybody up. Why would they? Why would they? It sure suits the propaganda that's been going on for the last 5 years. It's right in line with that. So if I'm someone just investigating it, my first inclination is, oh, one more piece of the propaganda puzzle meant to drive us insane, meant to exhaust us, meant to divide us, meant to get us one step closer to the destruction of humanity and Christianity in particular. Because remember, that's what's coming. That's the real plan. Got to get rid of the cancer, which is the people who think there's a God outside themselves, who are waiting for a Jesus to return from the sky. They've got a Messiah to offer you. They're going to bring a Messiah. They're going to point out how this Messiah satisfies what Jesus talked about. I think at that time, they're going to show you that Catholicism, which they're making to be an offense and demonstrating it over and over and over, from the priests raping the children to the paganized religion that it really is. It's got nothing to do with the teaching of Jesus, except for the very surface level propaganda from the Catholic Church of, you know, representing the teaching in order to teach you the false doctrine, right? Jesus said love, 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 but the way we're going to represent that is turning you into a bunch of haters, judgers who are ready to, hypocrites, basically. We will tell you what the teaching of Jesus is, but then we'll frame it in the framework of a bunch of hypocrites ready to send everybody to hell. And so the Catholic Church, as I've said, is an obvious patsy being set up to be destroyed. And so all that propaganda seems to be flowing very, I can't see a story in which there's a reconciliation of world events in any other light, but that the terrorists who run the world, and they run it through the Vatican as their fake Christianity. They run it through England as their control through finance. And they run it through America as their duped, militarized, brainwashed masses willing to go kill anyone that they tell them to kill for the name of Jesus or the great USA. If you're a religious fanatic, I mean, if you believe in religion, you're doing it for Jesus. If you don't believe in religion, you're doing it for the great and free USA. And so I want to at least be a voice consistently so that the people that tune in or might tune in the future can get a reflection on a different story. That's all fake. That's not true. America is the one country run strictly nowadays since 2012 on propaganda. It's always been propaganda, but it's official propaganda now. Since 2012, for the last 5 years, everything that comes through movies, television, computer, anything that comes through the news, anything that they put out over their airwaves is purposeful propaganda to prepare the world for war. That's it. There is no other reason for their existence in America. And if you don't know that, well, darn it, you're part of the problem. You are part of the problem, period. So for the few that have been studying with us and know that, I just want to reflect on the few details that bring that to light. The homelessness, the extreme weather, whether man-made or not, it doesn't matter. The point is, what do we do about it? We let the people that lose their homes go destitute, and we let the developers make money from it. We let those who really need go hungry, and those who don't need anything increase their wealth. Nothing could be farther from Christianity, no matter what you say about yourself. You call yourself a believer, well, keep supporting this friggin' society. And I think you're going to find yourself on the wrong end of the master. I don't know how to combat it because we can't all leave and run to Mexico. I mean, I advocated that many years ago. I first advocated, my own personal trip was one of blindly thinking we could change things, being an activist. We got to take it back. We got to, my solutions were the simple ones that everybody's been talking about forever. Simply don't make it a money game for the people that supposedly run the country, although I didn't realize then they don't, Congress doesn't run the country, president doesn't run the country. These are pawns that get paid to sell out the population while they lie and say they're doing it for everybody's good. That's the history proves. There's nothing else you could call them. They don't have any authority. Don't think for a minute your congressman can do a damn thing, even if he wanted to. He or she cannot do anything. And nowadays, they're not there to do anything. They're there to get paid. It's the best. If you ever watch Eddie Murphy's Distinguished Gentleman, it was put into a comedy many years ago. Exactly what it is. It's con men, liars, and thieves that go to Congress to get wealthy and sell out the people while lying to the people. And that was the mild side of things. That was just to get the right players in position so that when you were ready to cull humanity, there was no human beings left in government that would actually stand up and tell the truth and say, hey, 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 what the hell is going on here? That doesn't exist anymore. These people are hired to just be mouthpieces, actors, thieves. They're nothing but liars, and they know it. Don't think for a minute Bernie Sanders didn't know that he was lying to you, that he was playing his part. Bernie Sanders never had a thought that he would either gain office or do anything in office. He knew that, obviously. Nobody gets to take down this system at this point in history. There's just absolute, if I keep trying to, dance around this fact so that people might hear it in 100 different ways, that it might start to sink in whichever way makes sense to you. But there's no possibility that there's anything authentic going on in America except lies, except propaganda, except terrorism, except the most brutal and offensive, unforgivable, undeniable criminal activity of lying to the people to get them in a position where they can be slaughtered wholesale and blamed. And Christianity can be blamed for it. Catholicism can be blamed for it. Israel can be blamed for it. Islam can be blamed for it. That's what's coming. That's where we're at. And what I see in the world now is just simply that the propaganda is so thick that it's exhausting. You're either completely brainwashed and you watch the news like you're trying to keep up with it, or you're informed and everything you see brings you to some exhaustion or tears. And like a friend of mine said in Mexico, if you're 18 nowadays and you're not a revolutionary, you got no heart. And so, of course, being a revolutionary today doesn't really mean anything in the sense of trying to revolt in the classic configuration of using power against power to regain power. That's gone. That's why they give us all our revolutions that go nowhere. They actually fuel the system. They divide people. They keep people distracted. Everybody's aware and awake in America, and son of a gun, nobody wants to feed the homeless. Every Christian believes in Jesus, and they're just happy as hell to make sure that they can make their payments on their new house and their new car. But it's just okay that people are freezing in the streets and everything's a lie. Long as they're okay. Long as I'm okay, who cares about my neighbor? Nothing could be more anti-Christ than the state of America that I see today. Nothing that I'm aware of. I don't care if you go to Africa where they chop people's arms off, or Jamaica where I have been, where, boy, they live by the machete, right? The value of life is very cheap in Jamaica. They're happy to chop you up for a few bucks or just for a wrong look, because that's how invaluable life really is. Yet in America, the great and free and rich country, We don't even have the wherewithal to fight for what's decent, to stand for anything at all. We're just concerned about ourselves. And I'm just finding it unforgivable in myself. I'm finding it unforgivable in my countrymen. I'm finding it the darkness in humanity that is the the spirit that's crying out to God. How long can this go on? How much how much darker can it be? The darkness is presented as light, and in the name of light and love and Jesus, we continue to slaughter, we continue to starve people, we continue to hurt our neighbor in every way, in every fashion, whether it's simply the commercial version of making sure nobody has a free ride, nobody gets to do anything that used to come natural. You can't even anchor your boat in the middle of nowhere without someone telling you it's illegal. You're going to just have to get rid of that boat, my friend, or you're going to have to pay money you don't have to be over there with all those, the kind of people we want in America right now. The people that just are too stupid, too brainwashed, too selfish to stand for anything but their own comfort, their own progress, their own convenience, and literally can just watch people starving around them, and all they can think of is, what's in it for me? What can I get? How far ahead can I get from this? That's the darkness I see. That's the end times I see. It's always been going on, but never has it, I think, it been so obvious that the ability to change things are in the fewest hands, and the desire to change things doesn't even exist. Nobody cares. The liberals that care, it's mostly lip service. Of course, like the real believers, I'm not talking to, the true believer that's washing the feet of their servant. They're not here listening to me. The person that really knows what I'm saying doesn't need to hear what I'm saying. They're out there. They can't live with the fact that everyone's being pushed out of their homes, starved to death, can't get medical. I mean, these poor people in Yemen and all over the world, Iraq, where we killed millions, 500,000 children dead. Madeleine Albright says, yeah, I think it's worth it. How those people, how that doesn't stop everyone in their tracks. How can you be an American? How can you be a human being that hears those words and it doesn't stop you dead in your tracks and say, you know what? Until that changes, I won't put another dollar into this system. I won't go to work. I won't buy gas. I won't do anything. So as I was saying, I started as an activist thinking you could change something because I was that misinformed. And then I realized the only true solution is what Gandhi applied. If you really care, you simply sit down and say, no, I won't do it. I will not do it. Beat me, kill me, but I won't move a finger to progress this system. I will not work for you. I will not. I will die before I will progress this system one more step. Or you take, I suppose, the easy way out like I did, and you go somewhere else where at least the system hasn't quite gotten that bad. Unfortunately, it's all controlled by the same people. But as I say, at least where I live, the system isn't so bad where you just watch people starve so that you can make more money. That's not official yet. It's, I imagine, still frowned upon a little bit by a larger majority of the population who it's still a family place where you just don't feel it's right to let people starve while you get rich. Of course, I'm not saying there aren't people that are doing that in Mexico. I'm just saying in America, it's the official policy. It's what you think is, it's what Americans walk around priding themselves on being great and free because it's actually official policy that you starve people to death to make yourself richer. And the fact you call yourself a Christian, or you call it a Christian nation, or you even imagine there's anything great or free or dignified or defensible in it. There's nothing defensible in this country that I'm in right now. There's absolutely nothing to defend. And I'm so ashamed that the America that I imagined, and the people that do have a heart, that do care, are so confused, so brainwashed, that they can't see clearly that the only way to stop it is to refuse to support it, to sit down and say, I won't do it. I will not. I will not allow my support. I won't allow God to see me supporting this system. And I don't exclude myself because I have an American bank account. My money comes in America, and what can I do? What can I do? I can't stop it. I can't be so close to it. I can't be a part of it. I can't feel comfortable. It's absolutely tearing my heart out just to be here, just to go anywhere and feel like, well, I got a few bucks in my pocket. I'm eating. I mean, I don't have much. I don't have much. And yet, when I look at the people that have nothing, they're starving, they're cold. And I'm in one of the richest cities in the world, best real estate in the country, richest companies in the country, in the world. How can you sleep at night in this world? And so I just want to relate that to everybody this week because I feel like I want to say something, and I'm sorry that it's not. I mean, it's everything everyone already knows, so I'm not really doing much teaching this week. But I feel the need to give a personal appeal that the Master asked us to love our brothers. Paul asked us to love. John pointed out that that love is the only thing that matters. Giving. You can't walk past your brothers and sisters that are hungry and just say, God bless you. And I know it's a tremendous burden. What can we do? You and I that care. You and I that believe. I don't know. I don't have much, but I'll tell you, I can't pass a homeless person without reaching into my pocket and giving them something. I know it's not much. I want to cry. I can't feed everybody. I can't house everybody. I can't do anything. But Google could. Amazon could. Halliburton could. Starbucks can. Oh, and they do lovely campaigns. I see the poster. Starbucks are feeding so many people. Yeah? Why is the homeless problem getting worse in the city where you're from? Why aren't you building homeless shelters here? Why isn't it easy to go grab some real estate? How come the state doesn't donate the real estate? How come the rich don't donate the real estate? How come the corporations that are rich don't put up the money? And, if Jordan can build a tent city for 1 million people, Why can't Seattle provide a place for the thousands that are starving and freezing on the street? How can you call yourself a great and free country? How can you call yourself Christian in any stretch of the word? And so what's going on in the world right now to me is that push toward the final phase, if you will, because we're not there yet. The end is not yet. The one that's coming, that's really going to be, that this is all leading to. I mean, this is what I'm trying to say. If it's this bad now, how bad's it going to get? And that's what makes me feel like we still got some time. They're not building that. We're not at peace yet. They're not building that temple yet. We're still at exhaustion. They're still putting into place the need to destroy Christianity, the reason to blame Christianity. That's what's going on right now. And the part that makes me sick is that the Christianity I see ought to be destroyed. They deserve to be destroyed. I consider myself one of those that ought to be destroyed before I'm allowed to go on in my selfish, ambitious, self-centered concerns, when all around me is everything the Lord asked me to pay attention to. My enemies, my neighbor, the needy. These are the people that are a Christian supposed to be concerned with. We're supposed to be loving those that hate us and feeding those that don't have any food and sharing everything we have with everyone that needs. And so, I don't know, I'm sorry that I have to keep coming back to this, but I don't see that there's another important message in the world to just keep pretending that, oh, it's the end, and, come and get me, Jesus, come and get me, Jesus, come and get me, come and get me. It's all about me. It's all about what's in it for me. But heaven is within. And if that's going to mean anything at all, it's got to mean coming to grips with the idea that I'm nothing without all of God's children. That if anyone's starving, I'm starving. If anyone's freezing, I'm freezing. Everyone that's suffering right now is like my brother, who I cried for, and I still cry for, but that I could hardly get over the loss. Well, how come I don't feel that for every single person? That's the spiritual angle that they've stolen from us, that you'll find in the best of Buddhism, the best of Hinduism. If you read the Vedas, if you read the original Vedic writings, what you'll find in there is this idea that we are all the creation of God, and there is no real difference between any of us. It's just that the darkness in our Bible, the darkness rules the world. And I say that darkness isn't some pitchfork devil, but that adversary is the one in our own heart that makes us think that somehow it's justifiable to look after ourselves at the expense of everyone else. And so this is what I see in the world right now. The world that I'm in right now in the USA is the most offensive, degenerate example of humanity I can even imagine. I don't know that Sodom and Gomorrah could be any more evil, because what's described about Sodom and Gomorrah is that they preyed upon the innocent. That's what's really, not just that they were homosexuals. That's our modern hypocritical. brain dead, brainwashed Christian virgin. Oh, they were all homosexuals. No, they preyed upon the innocent. And I say that's what we do in America. And we pride ourselves on it now, like they did in Sodom and Gomorrah. They prided theirself on being able to prey upon the innocent. They were so advanced and progressive that they could lure you in, not knowing, making you think it was the land of opportunity, and then take everything you had and leave you for dead. So whether that's all an allegory or whether that's history, boy, oh boy, do I find it playing out in the world I'm in right now. And it plays out in Mexico too, because it's the spirit of man. It's not just it's got nothing to do with geography. It just so happens that in the geographical play out of history, that England and the United States became the great Satan. They became the great whore who would rather, that is Sodom and Gomorrah. And so I feel that's the message today, you guys. I'm in Sodom and Gomorrah right now. And Mexico looks like a little slice of heaven to me right now. Because, boy, oh boy, we don't have people freezing to death and starving to death where I live. And I can't imagine that we could feel comfortable down there if our town was full of people freezing to death and starving to death. I don't know how people can just walk by it every day and imagine that it's these people's fault that they live on the street and have nowhere to go, nothing to eat. So I'm just making that appeal to all of our hearts and minds, that it might somehow reach our soul, and that we might find the strength to emulate the master, or at least emulate the best of who the master inspired to give all that we have, because that is eternal life, that heaven is within you. You're not going anywhere, Christian. You're not being raptured into the sky. If you ever hope to see the kingdom of heaven, as I do, I would caution you, as I caution myself, that it's only going to be found when we're willing to give all that we have to the poor and follow him. That's eternal life, and that's the love of God. That's the Spirit of God. So I'm sorry that this message isn't a little more instructional or upbeat, but I don't find the world is in that position right now. I'm trying to encourage us to be like the Master, not get ahead in this evil, dark world, this Sodom and Gomorrah. If you live in America, you live in Sodom and Gomorrah. If you live in one of the big cities in America, boy, oh boy, you're right up against it. And I know it's hard. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody, and I'm not trying to be self-righteous. I want to make sure people understand I'm including myself in that group that is hypocritical and can't seem to give all we have to the poor. But I'm trying. I mean, I'm so affected right now by what I see that I can hardly bring myself to find the strength to get around here. I'm absolutely depressed seeing that I'm one of the residents of Sodom and Gomorrah who isn't being stolen from and killed, but I'm walking by those people and thinking, too bad for them. Right? Nothing I can do. Nothing I can do. System's bigger than me. Sodom and Gomorrah. And so that's our problem, you guys. It's not, the system's bigger than us, but the Spirit of God's in each of us. Heaven is within. And it's very hard for me right now not to think that the only answer is to simply sacrifice everything. I know that that is the Spirit of God, and I don't know why it's so difficult to simply let it all go. Somehow, my attachment to comfort, my attachment to my own dreams, my own ambitions, my attachment to my own potential to stay out of the gutter keeps me selfish and self-centered. And so I tend to keep finding the allegory of the whole Spirit of God inside myself. I see the adversary inside myself. I realize now it's not about a devil outside, it's the devil inside. It's the adversary inside of us that keeps us from being able to follow the master. And why that is that's the gold that Jesus wants us Laodiceans to buy from him. It's gold, it's eternal life. Why would you hang on to your worldly goods when the master's offering the gold that is eternal life? And it's a rhetorical question because all of us, I think, at least I know the few of us that pay attention to this ministry and this Bible study, we're trying. We're what do they say? If you shoot for the stars, right? At least when you miss, you land, or I forget how it goes. But when you aim high, at least when you miss a little higher. If you somehow think there's nothing you can do and you just keep wandering past, well, boy, oh boy, how weak is our faith? How sad? How removed from the Spirit of God are we who call ourselves Christians and believers? And so it's a real conundrum for me. I can't wait to get back to my own comfortable life in Mexico, and yet I realize what a sin that really is when why can't I dedicate my life to feeding somebody that needs to be fed? And I think it's a paradox that's meant to challenge our soul and our spirit because there is no answer. Only the Messiah was strong enough to give his life in that way. Only the Messiah was true enough and pure enough to live completely for others. We're just called to follow that. And I suppose there's that whole range of what that means to follow it, from just being interested in it, which is better than not being interested in it, to the people like Father Damien or Mother Teresa or Francis of Assisi who embodied it to the greatest potential of a human possibility. And the rest of us fall somewhere in between. And so I'm just, this message is an encouragement to let's, take one step further, please, for the sake of ourselves, because I think the Lord will look after those homeless and destitute. I think when Jesus does come, the only place you will find Jesus is among the homeless and destitute. So if you don't get comfortable with those people now, I say you're never going to find Jesus, the Master. Where do you think he's going to be? At Oprah's church? Right? Where's Jesus going to be, Christian? At your house? Your fancy place? Who's never seen a homeless person enter the door? No way. No way. Not until he goes and comforts every one of those starving, freezing people that I see in the street with no real hope no real options. Nobody cares. So anyway, I know this is a bit of a downer message, but I'm sorry. I'm in a downer. I'm in Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'm trying to relate to people that if you're going to be a Christian, then the responsibility is to love, not to hide, not to run, not to count our blessings, but to bless others in the name of the Master, to follow him. So thank you if you managed to listen to all this. I'm sorry I had to depart from the Bible study this week. I will hope to, by next week, to get in a better position to be able to get back to the Blue Letter Bible and our revisionist reconciliation of the Scripture. And boy, I don't know. Right now, I would just ask everybody to pray for those that are in need. And as John said, to just say, bless you, brother, does nothing. Feed somebody in need, please, this week. Find somebody in need. Find them. They're not hard to find anymore. Wherever you are, please find someone in need and feed them. Give them shelter. Give them a blanket. It's cold out there. It's really cold out there. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you next week.